am I still sitting here? I don't understand it. It makes no sense.
Imagine being accused of a rape and murder you did not commit. Imagine the word guilty ringing through your ears as you're sentenced to death. Imagine being freed when new DNA evidence proves your innocence, walking out of jail a free man. And after 2.5 years, imagine it all being taken away because of nothing but a technicality. I don't have to imagine. I am Tony Apanovitch. I am an innocent man, and I just want to go home again.
What happened in Tony's case is one of the strangest and most infuriating death penalty cases I've ever come across. This is the case of Tony Apanovitch. It was 1984 when a nurse named Mary Ann Flynn was found raped and murdered in her Ohio home after not showing up for work. There were no witnesses and no surveillance at all. In evidence terms, there was nothing clean pointing to a perpetrator. Investigators land on a guy named Tony Apanovitch, who had painted the victim's home a few months earlier.
Well, tunnel vision set in by the police.
Dale Baich has been working on Tony's case since 1991.
It was a very high-profile case. I think the Cleveland police looked very bad. Crime scene investigation was bungled, and they needed to get someone.
He was convicted of the crime in 1985 and sentenced to death.
I didn't expect to get found guilty. I really did not think that would happen.
There was no evidence linking Tony to the crime, no DNA. He even had an alibi for where he was at the time of the murder, and multiple people agree that he was at the local bar drinking. In fact, when police first started questioning Tony, he was incredibly cooperative.
The police asked him for hair, blood, and saliva. He turned that over.
I gave him hair, blood, why should I? I'm not worried. I didn't do it, so go ahead.
He waived his right to counsel.
I thought if you're innocent, you don't need an attorney. That's, why should you?
He was held for 3 days and released because there was no evidence tying him to the crime.
He let them question him multiple times without a lawyer. He let them search his house because in his mind he was innocent and he had nothing to hide. But none of that mattered. The prosecution narrowed in on him, arguing that he had access to the victim's home and therefore he must have been the one who did it.
And what's interesting about the arrest is that he got a call at home from the detective saying, "Look, Tony, the grand jury just indicted you. You're facing the electric chair. Can you turn yourself in?" And 2 hours later, his brother drove him down to the police station, and that was it.
One would think that if you believed somebody was a rapist and a murderer, that you wouldn't arrest them via phone call. When Tony asked at the time, "Why are you doing this to me?"
And I kept asking him, why me? And he said, "Look, Tony, we had a lot of pressure from the media to get somebody, and you look worse than anybody else."
Needless to say, Tony has always maintained his innocence. Now, even at the time, not everyone was convinced that Tony was guilty. In fact, in 1987, after Tony appealed his conviction, the Ohio Supreme Court almost voted to overturn his conviction, with 3 justices saying he was innocent to 4 voting to uphold his conviction. But one justice, who actually voted to keep Tony behind bars, later agreed that, and I quote, "There is no question that there is some residual doubt in this case." Basically, he was saying that something about this case never sat right with him. Now, if you go back through my channel, you'll see multiple possible wrongful conviction cases where there might be some, quote, residual doubt. That alone doesn't make this case so shocking. It's actually a consistent result of an often imperfect criminal justice system. But then science showed up, and the case got much more interesting.
1989, we asked, is there any biological material that could be tested? And the state responded, no, it's been lost or destroyed. What happened in 1991 is the state said that it found 3 slides in a desk drawer in the corner of the coroner's office.
Those slides contained DNA evidence taken from the victim's mouth and pelvis that were previously believed to have been lost. At the time, given the technology available in 1991, there was too little fluid to do DNA testing. But in the early 2000s, as technology advanced, it was actually the prosecutors who requested that DNA be retested. And that's an important part of the story to remember for later. It's normally the inmate's defense team who are the ones requesting testing on DNA DNA evidence because they're trying to get their client out of prison. This time it was the prosecutors who requested the testing on that new DNA evidence. And they didn't even inform the defense team that they had found the evidence in the first place or that they were doing the testing at all.
And they had that DNA evidence and they hid it.
Did not tell us about it, tested those slides, and we found out about those results in 2008.
With the advanced new technology, Tony's defense team also requested DNA testing on evidence that was available to them. And those pieces of evidence that the defense team tested unquestionably excluded Tony from the scene of the crime. And here's the crazy part. Based on that newfound evidence, in 2015, a judge actually ruled that Tony was innocent and he was released from prison.
A judge made a decision based on the evidence submitted that Tony's DNA was not present and released Tony on bond.
I felt vindicated. I finally proved my innocence.
It's a moment every wrongfully convicted person can only dream of. Tony walks off death row after decades and into freedom. He gets a job, he gets married, and he starts to rebuild his life.
It was unreal. I was in prison, in jail, and I woke up a free man. Finally.
And then the unimaginable happens. After 2.5 years of living out in the free world and without any warning, an Ohio Supreme Court judge reverses the decision and sends Tony back to death row. And here's the part that makes me genuinely so angry on Tony's behalf. Because the reversal wasn't about the DNA evidence they provided, and it wasn't even about whether or not Tony was guilty or innocent. It actually came down to who requested the testing of that DNA evidence that ended up setting him free. Basically, it came down to a procedural technicality. Because remember how I told you it was the prosecutors who were the ones to request testing on that evidence? Well, it turns out Ohio law apparently requires the defense team on behalf of the incarcerated person to be the one to request DNA testing.
Tony had to request the DNA under Ohio law, but the state had hid the DNA. The state had done the testing. The results were reviewed by a court. But again, the Ohio Supreme Court relied on that technicality. And the next day, Tony was back on death row.
How were the defense team supposed to request testing on that evidence when they didn't even know it existed? The prosecution team never informed them that they had found this missing evidence. The defense team told the Ohio Supreme Court that, and the court basically said that's not their problem.
They said, we recognize that it may seem unduly formalistic or unfair to foreclose the trial court from considering a post-conviction claim that is based on DNA testing that the state itself procured. But it is the prerogative of the General Assembly, not this court, to set the terms by which an offender may pursue post-conviction relief.
And that's the only reason Tony is speaking to us from death row today. And I simply can't fathom how frustrating it must be for Tony to be sat on death row because of a procedural technicality. Basically, a tiny detail of an Ohioan law. And now we arrive at today. Judges have spoken out on his behalf. Advocates have taken his case on. Kim Kardashian just posted on her Instagram story about his case. And people are really pressuring the governor to do something about this case because it's so unfair. But the governor says he can't grant clemency until an execution date is set. But that same governor keeps pushing execution dates back because he can't find the lethal injection drugs to kill people. The whole thing is a mess.
That litigation could go on for a number of years. He's 72 years old. His health has been declining in recent years. So, we're doing all that we can to try and get him out.
An innocent man, and this time I really do believe this man is innocent, has to sit on death row for decades, unable to live his one precious life on this earth because of a procedural technicality.
Why am I still sitting here? I don't understand it. It makes no sense.
If you want to find out more about Tony's case and how you can help, go to his advocacy page, Justice for Apanovitch. And if you appreciate being informed about possible cases of wrongful convictions, please do subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.